Hey there, it's Lenny Magill with the GlockStore Performance and Custom Shop. Here in Tennessee today, at the farm in Tennessee, where accuracy counts. And today we're gonna do something a little bit different. You know, this farm is really a neat place. It's beautiful land, as you can see, and maybe you've seen in other videos. But today is March 7th, and today's the day we're going to install our bees in the beehive. And the gentleman who's going to help us out, his name is Dick Brittner. He is the president of the Columbia Beekeepers Association. He's been kind enough to let me videotape this entire process, and kind enough to come up here and help us get this our beehive started. We got 3 hives we're going to set up. We've already done most of them. They're just finishing up the last. I recorded the whole thing. Ask a lot of questions. Hopefully I answered, I asked the right kind of questions, so you can really get a lot out of this video. But I find that beekeeping and bees themselves are fascinating. And one thing we always have to remember is bees are very important to our economy. They're very important for our health. They're very important for our food supply. And so here in Tennessee, I decided to throw some bees in the mix to make it kind of fun and kind of neat. And at the end of the day, we're gonna get some honey. So we'll have our own honey to sell in the retail store as well. It'll be the farm in Tennessee where accuracy counts, honey, all right? So with all that said, let's go ahead and do from the beginning with Dick Brittner from the Columbia Beekeepers Association, this video on the beehives that we're installing from scratch, from really start to finish, right here at the farm in Tennessee. All right, so what you're trying to do is just make sure these blocks are straight and leveled up, huh?
Yeah, they need to be level.
Do the bees not like it when it's crooked?
The bees won't mind, but when these hives start building up tall enough, if they're leaning too much, you'll get the center of gravity over too high and it'll topple.
And then, of course, with the honey, it gets heavier and heavier, I guess, right?
Yes.
Oh, look at that, a level on everything. Well, today's another different day here weather-wise. Yesterday was crazy, and then today's, yesterday's cold.
Oh, I know. Yeah, we shouldn't have tried it yesterday. It was way too cold. It was after 4 o'clock when I finally got into my hives at home when the sun had come out. Wind had died down enough.
So what do the bees like to pollinate or to fly to? What is their favorite? Do they have a favorite, or is there around here in Tennessee, is there one thing better than another?
In this area, we don't have the large agricultural farms that produce crops that bees would thrive on, such as citrus crops, beans,
right,
strawberries. We mostly have some small vegetable farms, blueberries, some orchards, but by and large, I'd say probably 95% of the diet the bees get comes from wildflowers and from trees. And there's certain trees that are very excellent nectar and pollen sources, like black locust trees, tulip poplar, basswood, which is linden, redbud trees, and there's quite a few other trees that blossom later in the summer that do have good nectar sources for the bees.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't think of trees as much as
yeah, I didn't.
Clover and other things.
Got into beekeeping.
Yeah.
This may be a coarse leveling, but I think you're going to be within 10% of where you need to be. That you could come back and just stick some small shims under the low sides later. Yeah.
There you go. That's probably it right there. Almost.
That's pretty close.
Hey, just tap it down in the front, you'll be fine. Just give it a little weight, it'll fall down on itself.
Well, the whole thing is going to settle
Yeah.
a little bit because of the weight eventually.
Yeah, it's pretty much in there.
What is it this way?
There you go. That looks good. How about side to side?
Well, it still looks higher this way, across
Yeah,
the two blocks.
it is.
Yeah.
We need that side to go down. Right here. Would you? I'll get that.
I didn't show you, would have been perfect.
Closer.
This looks high yet, doesn't it? No, that looks good.
We good there?
That's good. That's good. We'll go with that. It won't hurt.
It's actually on the front. It's about the same. So we're good.
It's an optical illusion.
Yes.
So the front of it is this side right here, right?
That's the landing board. Yes.
Okay. Landing
All
board.
right. Ready to do that one?
Now that's where the bees land. Is that what that's all about?
Yeah.
Okay. So they light on there and then they crawl up into the hive.
Yep.
And what is this? This is just the first screen, huh?
This is called the bottom board. It's a screened board, and the use of screen boards probably became popular in the last 10 years in that it lets debris drop through, and the bees are always creating debris inside. And it also lets the varroa mites drop through if a mite is dislodged off of a bee's body.
Okay.
And a varroa mite can't crawl back up into the hive
Right.
once it falls out.
So you also got a little bit of airflow down here too. I guess that's good.
It allows airflow, and then the downside of that is in the wintertime, you're going to put a board in there
Ah, okay.
to block it as much as possible to help keep the heat in the hive.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's called it's just a corrugated board that can be used to close that bottom up. And we're going to put those in today because we do have some cold nights coming up. When I started back into beekeeping in 2007, typically all the hives had just solid wood bottom boards. And this lets you see so much easier what's going on in the hive.
Now you say it's going to be cold. I mean, it's not like cold, but 45, 50 maybe.
They're talking 33, 34 degrees.
Are they really? Wow, here in May. What's going on?
See, the brood in those boxes that has not hatched out yet has to be kept typically at about 93 degrees Fahrenheit. And it would surprise you that on a night when the temperature's down in the teens, all those adult bees can cluster tight enough in there around that unhatched brood to keep it at 93 degrees.
That is hard to believe that the bees would be able to do that.
Believe, but it happens.
Because you wouldn't think they'd have the body weight to carry that warmth.
Well, they have a technique. Instead of crawling on their Pelletron, and you know how hot you get if you do a workout on a Pelletron, they crawl down into an empty cell and vibrate their wings. So that's the exercise they do to generate that excess heat off of their body, which keeps the cluster of bees warm.
Okay, so you got another box you're putting on top right here. What's that?
Yeah. Now this is called a deep box. You can see it's about almost 10 inches deep. And for literally 100 years or better, this was the box that everybody used for the brood and for honey. But later on, people started switching to smaller boxes. This is called a medium box. It's about 7 inches high. And they also make a shallow box that's about 6 inches high. And the reason they went to the smaller boxes is that when the frames are all filled with nectar and then dehydrated to the point that it's honey and the cells are capped, it's ready to extract. But this box full of honey frames would be in excess of 90 pounds.
Wow, that's heavy.
If
Yeah.
it's up here on the hive, God help you try to get it off. So this still weighs 60 pounds when it's full of honey. And the shallower box would be in the neighborhood of 50 pounds. So myself, all my hives utilize medium boxes, top to bottom, whether there's brood in there or whether there's honey in there. And it works fine for me because at my age, I can't be handling the heavier boxes. And it gives me one box. That means inventory-wise, I only have to carry one item instead of 2 or 3
Righto.
different sizes.
That makes sense to me.
Yep. All right, we're getting there. Now, what I should have done is put the second block on these hives here to get them up
A little bit higher.
above the skunk range. Yes, we had a beekeeper this past winter that lost 5 of their 6 hives from skunks. They had them down too low on the ground, and throughout the winter, because the hives were far enough away from the house that she didn't know the skunks were acting as predators there every night. When she finally went out and looked at her hives, she found 5 of them had no bees left.
Oh, goodness. That was probably shocking.
Well, it's an expense because you're talking a minimum of $150 to put a new package of bees in a hive. So that was a big expense
Yeah.
to restart.
Well, we don't see any skunks around here, but I'm sure they're here.
Oh, they're here, I guarantee it. Guarantee it.
And then, of course, they'll smell the honey and the bees, and they'll come around, huh?
Did you see the hole in the ground over there, Scott?
I did.
I don't know if that's a groundhog, probably is.
I hope it's groundhog.
Or a skunk.
Nice and level.
We're getting there.
Getting there, yeah. How about that?
Did a great job on
Go down
leveling.
just a little. Well, I did better on the other one. We're getting there.
It's supposed to get easier a second time around, Scott.
Yeah, I know.
That looks good. Oh, that's almost there, huh?
We're close.
Yeah.
Just a hair more.
You don't have to be perfect.
Scott likes to be perfect.
I have a problem with that. I like to.
That's... All right, so you got these guys started here, and then what's the next step on this first hive here?
We are ready to put the bees in.
Really? This early, huh?
So
Okay.
we'll get all 3 hives ready first before we start that, because we'll have to get our protective gear on. Because the bees, some of them will not be happy.
Now, how do they take to their new home? What happens the first couple of days?
They'll start foraging activities right away. When you move a beehive, you have to move it at least a half to 3/4 of a mile away from its original site, or the foragers that come out at that new site will reorient back to their
Original, huh?
original site.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
Now you can move a hive 6-8 feet, no problem. They'll find the hive. And I have moved hives across from one side of my yard to the other, moving it maybe every 3 hours until I got it accomplished, and the foragers returning find the hive.
Well, it's pretty fascinating that they have that built into them
It's,
almost automatically, you know?
A bee is an amazing insect. It's probably been the most widely studied insect in history because it's about the only insect that really benefits mankind from its honey production. But it's called an organism because every bee in there lives to protect the other bee so that the organism as a whole will survive.
The community itself, yeah.
Because it's made up of one queen, and then all the workers are females, unmated females, and the drones, which are the males. And all the drones do is eat and go out and wait for an unmated queen to come by to do her mating. And when a new queen is born, she goes out a few days after she's born and capable of flying well, and seeks out what they call a drone area, because all the drones from hives over a multi-square mile area will collect in that one site. And when the queen finds that, she'll begin mating. And the queen typically mates with about 14 drones and returns to the hive, and that's her one and only mating opportunity.
Well, that's interesting. A lot of stuff I didn't know about bees. That's fascinating. So she's got quite a life, that queen.
And she'll never leave the hive after that, typically. She's there until the day she dies, or until the hive maybe gets too populated that it wants to propagate its species by the queen leaving with half of the bees to start a new colony somewhere. And that's called swarming then.
Yeah, you've seen the big clouds of bees flying around.
Yes, and I've been inside several of those. The bees are absolutely timid, mild. You can stand inside one of those 30-foot diameter ball of 10,000 bees circling. The queen is in there somewhere, but you can't see her. They're moving too fast. And they will not bother you one bit, because their whole instinct is, let's get the queen moving to where our new home is. And typically they don't know where they're going that first hour when they come out of the hive.
All right, so we got our 3 boxes now set, basically. So these big ones, now this is where you actually put the bees in the bottom here?
Yeah, we're going to take the frames out of that nucleus box.
Okay, so frames just fit right in.
So, Scott, can you get the deep box over the side of the truck?
Yes, sure.
It's heavy.
So this is just basically a box right here that
Set it right down here.
is kind of started already, I guess, right?
These are the frames. See, you can see there's still some honey and pollen in that frame that the bees can utilize.
Okay, so they've got something to start with.
Yeah. So I've had these sitting outside protected, and then I cycled everything through a freezer about a month ago to make sure there were no wax moths eggs on the frames. So that's what we'll add to these with the ones on it. So we're ready to put some gear on.
Okay. So this guy right here then is already, like you said, has food for them, so they, you know, at least they're started. They're not going to be hungry.
Yeah, this frame, those darker cells indicate the queen in this hive had previously laid brood.
Okay.
And it hatched out.
And then the honey's up here where it's got the wax on it.
Yeah, because they'll put brood in a semicircular pattern. They'll flank it with pollen and honey.
Okay.
That's the food they mix to feed the bees.
Oh, that's interesting. And the honey's always in that wax-like area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just have a veil that you don't need to have a full suit on.
That's what he said. It's all right.
You might put
You wear it, and I'll wear it.
you might put the gloves on, Lenny.
I'll put my gloves on at least.
We do have a veil.
And I've got a veil. Yep. Okay, that'll work. How fun! It's got the bunny suit gone.
I know. I'm gonna look funny.
That's good.
Pull that over. That's the back,
Okay.
and we'll tie those strings around your chest to keep the veil down so it doesn't slip up on a bare neck.
So this is good. Can this be loosened a little bit? Or?
We let that down.
How far down can I go?
Let me grab these strings. Okay. Put your hands down. Arms up.
Hot dog.
I'm going to tie it in the back.
All right, that's cool. Well, I'm sure they can sting through this shirt, but I guess they probably not too.
I don't think they'll really.
Now, when are bees aggressive? What's
Bad weather.
bad weather? Yeah. So in the heat here, typically they're a little bit more docile. Is that true, or?
Yeah. Well, they're upset when you go into a hive too. When you're starting to pull frames out of a hive, they get upset.
Well, we don't want any upset bees, but we're gonna go for it. Now, obviously, everybody gets stung in this business at one time or another, right?
Quite often.
Oh, that's encouraging.
Oh, I know.
Hey, that's a good look for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. You should wear that at the supermarket.
Yeah, that clear.
That's your PPE, your personal protective equipment.
Exactly. Well, Richard and my
Sock tops. I've learned to wear these
Over top. That's smart. Yeah. So that gives you a
over
little.
that joint
so you don't
because
get in there.
the jacket slips up and exposes you. And there's a Velcro strip you need.
I will put these
put
big
down
gloves
too,
on.
Or there's a little bit of hole. It's covered now.
Okay, sweet.
That they can crawl through.
Do they seek out flesh? Do they?
They have that ability.
I guess that's what they do. All right, moment of truth here. Here come the bees. And there are the nukes.
You've got some undrawn frames, right?
So,
In the bags?
yes.
Deep frames?
Yeah, but I don't
Okay,
think
5, 6, 7. Let's pull out 2. Want to go with a 9 frame spacing instead of 10?
You tell us what's better.
That's what I use, 9 frame spacing.
Okay. And why so? It's a little bit more easier to operate.
Easier to get the frames apart.
Yes.
And I find that up in the honey boxes, that extra little gap between each frame allows them to draw the wax out more so that you have a heavier frame of honey. And if they draw the wax out beyond the edge of that frame, then you can take your knife and slice it off because you have to remove those caps to extract the honey.
Mm-hmm.
This frame right here, see, they've not built out much at all beyond this edge, so you'd have to do a lot of scraping to get those cells open so that you can extract the honey. Okay, right now, this is a feeder box he had on top, and this will bring some bees out.
Wow, there they are. And what's the best way to avoid getting stung?
Stay away. I don't know where the queen is, so I'm going to slide this first frame over to the side as much as I can to make a little extra room, because if the queen is on this first frame and I pull it out, I don't want to roll her over and injure her.
So how would you determine? Just by looking, or?
Well, See, that one just stung me there.
You got through the glove?
Yeah, they can sting through those gloves, but one thing about the vinyl gloves, you can just snap it out and it disembeds the stinger.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, look at that. That's pretty interesting.
See, this is covered with brood. Oh, I'm sorry, this is pollen. See all that multicolored pollen down in those cells?
Yep.
Pollen is their protein. And while I'm looking at that frame, I'm looking for a queen, which will have a blue dot, green dot if it's last year's queen. Don't see it. So right there, we know we got pollen. So we'll probably find brood in here now on this one. See, they're fairly mild right now. It was just that initial opening that kind of excited them.
Well, we like mild. It won't upset bees.
Okay, there's your brood. See, it's almost the same color as that pollen.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a circle, like you said. They kind of protect around it, right?
Right. The very first time queen lays, she starts, lays that semicircular pattern and just keeps increasing until she fills the frame. Well, that means the first ones to hatch out are where she comes back and starts relaying eggs.
There's a green. There's a queen, isn't it?
That's the queen.
Right there. Did you get that?
Where's she at?
She's got the green dot.
Oh, I see her. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, right there.
Okay. So we're just going to put her right in the middle and build around her there.
And so obviously you don't want to disturb the bees or knock them off, right?
Now, you probably can't see it, but if you get the angle of the sun just right, do you see all that
Liquid color.
that white liquid in there?
Yes.
Those are larvae. A queen lays an egg, and on the third day it hatches into a larval stage. And that's when they start feeding. So they fill the bottom of that cell with that honey pollen mix. We call it bee bread. And that's what the larva eats for the next 7 days. And on the 10th day, the bees cap the cell, and it then goes through its pupal stage. That was the covered cells right there. 11 days after that, it then hatches and is an adult bee. Now in this one here, you can see some older larvae. See all those wet worms in there? Yeah. I don't have my reading glasses on, but more than likely, these outside cells do have some eggs in them.
The liquid that I'm seeing in there is what?
That is nectar.
Nectar.
Yeah. I'm sure these cells have a very tiny white, looks like a rice grain in the bottom. That is an egg. She lays 1 egg per cell. So right now, that one is full of larvae and eggs. This one's full of capped brood. And this one is full of capped brood also. Now, you can see a lot of these cells have nectar back in them. And sometimes that happens where if there's a good forage going on, they'll start backfilling with nectar because they don't have enough empty frames to continue expanding their brood. So that's why we're going to add some more frames. And that one is covered with pollen and nectar also.
Nectar being the liquid,
Yeah.
pollen being the
that waxy material. Yeah. So we're going to put it on the outside, on the very outside. Go ahead and sit that down in there.
Outside.
Yeah, scoot it back. And then we'll put a partially empty food frame in there.
And what kind of spacing do you want to have between them?
Oh, I'll figure that out in a little bit. Typically about a 1/4 inch between those sidebars.
Okay.
So now we're going to put a frame in here that's not drawn,
That they can work on.
that they can start drawing wax. Because it is those nurse bees, after they get about 10 days old, have the capabilities of drawing the wax out of the glands on their body and making new wax. Okay. Push this one back to here too.
This one goes back?
Yeah, all the way over to this side here. So those two main food frames we've put to the outside of the hive.
And can you just push those all the way against the wall there, or they have room, or?
Yeah, I'll just get it back now so I can get these in and then I'll space them.
Okay.
You saw my hives had that metal strip that had the spaces on it, so it's too easy to put them back together. Wait, you want that one back there?
We've got spacers.
Yeah.
To one side.
Okay, so right now I'm just going to move them just a little bit and leave about a 1/4 inch between them. Yeah, you can do it yourself just like this, but if you got multiple hives and you're in them once every 10 days or something, it's a lot of work to space them.
So I guess I'm surprised that you're not using a smoker or anything like that, because I've seen that on TV. Do people do that anymore?
Oh yeah, when they're really mad. When I first opened that, a couple of them came out and hit my veil. I could hear them popping off of it. And sometimes I'll get a dozen of them and land on my lungs and try to sting me. And if that persists, I'll get the smoker out and smoke them. That sounds easy.
What do you do with the rest of the bees in there?
We're going to shake them out.
Oh, how about that?
And there's your box of honey that came out of that hive.
Oh, how about that? That was just sitting there for how long? Now, honey's good forever, right? It doesn't go bad. Was that correct?
Well, it can crystallize depending on the ratio of the sugars and the amount of water content. It can crystallize. But all you do is put it in a pan, put it on a burner on low heat for a couple hours, and it redissolves.
Oh, how about that?
Never throw it out.
Excellent. Well, how fun. We have some harvest already.
Yeah. Awesome. I didn't get stung. Hey, I'm happy. Anytime I don't get stung, I'm happy.
All right, where are we at now?
Well, so we've got them set up, right?
We've got them in there.
Yeah, and so what is now? What do we do? What happens? What happens from here? When do you expect to get honey? When do it's May 7th. What's the plan?
Plan now is for them to expand, let the queen expand her brood laying up into that second box. And want you to come back in 1 week, 6 or 7 days, open each of those hives and see what's going on in that top box.
Okay.
And tell me what you see then.
Okay.
And you should see nectar coming up in those frames that are already drawn, and you should see those undrawn frames drawing out. She may not be laying any brood up there yet, but she'll get there soon.
Okay.
So that's what we're going to let them do right now. And probably in about 2 weeks, we'll put another medium box on top.
Okay.
And
So you'll put a medium box and then more.
With a queen excluder underneath it, because we want that queen to stay down in those bottom 2 boxes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why is that? Just so she can.
Because she likes to travel upward, and she will come up to the top box if you have a large number of boxes on the hive. And you don't want that. You want to keep the brood down low so that all the honey is stored on the top.
That's
And
it.
the main nectar flow is really starting. My backyard scale hive, I checked last night, showed I gained 16 pounds in the last 8 days on that hive.
Wow.
So that's saying there's a lot of nectar out there that they're now bringing in.
I noticed we have a clover field, a red clover field, at the other end of our wheat field, and it was full of honeybees.
Was it?
A couple weeks ago.
Honeybees or bumblebees?
No,
Honeybees?
it was honeybees. I assure
Somebody
you.
else's honeybees.
Well, there used to be several hives here because
Yeah.
they have swarmed, went into a tree.
Yeah,
and
they're
been feeding
feral
out of that.
hives. They became feral hives, yeah.
Okay, because there were so many of them, I was shocked that he had hives here, and I think he may have.
Yeah. I'm
Awesome.
sure any hive that swarmed did move into a tree around here somewhere.
Yeah, lots of hollow trees. So basically, you just let them sit. Now, when do you actually harvest the honey? How long is
Yeah,
that?
well, we'll kind of look at that probably early in June and see what's in the hive.
Okay.
And it may not be June necessarily. It may be later in the summer, but you should get honey off of these hives this year. Not as much as what I'll get off of mine, because I started with hives in February, 3 boxes high and full of bees. Not a nuke.
Right.
Smaller population, yeah.
Now, so what do we have to do to keep this population thriving and growing throughout this year and then throughout the next year?
Well, I think after this first week, we'll start talking about the mite and the beetle treatments you'll need to do. We don't need to do it right now because Byron has been treating for mites already this spring, so they're okay right now. And I didn't see any hive beetles, and they typically don't start to become a problem until May and June. You start to see them. I've seen very few in my hives, so it's looking good right now on hive beetles.
Okay. And, so what's interesting is, there's some activity around that landing post. I mean, but if people come up just to look at them, they can, they're not going to disturb them.
Anybody can come up, and as long as they stay to the side, they're fine.
Okay.
They should not have any problems with the bees.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we don't really need to open them up until we're inspecting them or
Right.
or harvesting. And then when, and we're not going to do it right now, but when you go to harvest the honey, how do you actually do it? What do you pull the whole frame out, or what do you do?
Yeah, you take the top off the box, and you'll start looking. And then any frame that is at least 95% capped, you can extract, set aside to take home and pull the honey out of it.
Okay, so you then have to scrape off the cap and just pour it out, or how's it work?
You put it in an extractor, which is just a cage that you put the frames in, and it's motorized. Spin it, and the centrifugal force spits the honey out
Oh, that's
onto
interesting.
the side, and it runs down to the bottom through a filter and into a bucket.
So you have
ready to eat.
there's a machine or a tool that helps you do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. And so and then you just have to filter it again, or is that just it?
You'll filter it. I filter it a second time before I bottle it
Yeah.
because you never know. You may have a bee wing or God knows what.
Well, honey is very viscous. So what do you filter it through? Is it a cloth or
It's
a?
a 200 micron filter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's
Very, very fine.
a
Yeah.
special honey filter.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it has to be 70 degrees or better, or that honey is extremely thick and viscous.
Yes.
And it takes forever to pass through a filter. Yeah.
And that's what you call raw honey.
That is raw honey.
Yeah.
It's not processed in the sense, a lot of the honey commercially available in the stores has been heated to some fairly high temperatures so that they can filter it faster, so that they can take the pollen out of it. And if you take the pollen out, you cannot tell the country of origin of the honey.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, because there are huge volumes of honey imported from South America and mostly from Asia.
Mm-hmm.
There have been major adulteration issues with it.
Right. Yeah. I could.
Yeah.
So now the health benefits are better when it's raw, I guess, too, right?
Well, the local pollens, yeah.
Yeah.
And what is local pollen? I think you could go to Bowling Green, Kentucky, or Huntsville, Alabama. We basically got the same flowers, weeds, and trees. So I would consider that your local pollen range, not just Murray County.
Right. And so that supposedly helps your immune system because it's the local pollen. Yeah.
Yes, it supposedly promotes the antihistamines that help control those issues.
Well, it's been pretty fascinating. I mean, we're anxious to see how this progresses and what kind of honey we can get out of here.
I think it'll do very well here because I was tickled to see that hive in December when we looked at it. It was just chock full of honey and no bees, and we knew we had to do something with it, or come the warm weather, the wax moths and other critters would have found it and destroyed it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty fascinating. Well, thank you very much for coming up and doing this. Any words you want to say to anybody watching this about the Columbia Beekeepers Association?
Well, we typically meet the first Sunday of each month at 2 o'clock at the First United Methodist Church in downtown Columbia. Haven't met since February, so I'm hoping June comes up favorably.
Yes.
Because we have some good meetings, good topics, and try to get everybody to where they need to be at that particular time in the season. So if you're interested in beekeeping, go to the Cabell website, columbiaareabeekeepers.com. My name, address, phone number's on there, and I kind of invite every new beekeeper, come out to my house, we'll sit down in the backyard and look at things and talk about things.
Excellent.
And give you an idea of what's involved. Like I said before, there's a lot of work to be a successful beekeeper.
Well, thank you very much, and good luck to us.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.